This video is brought to you by shirts. Shirts! I have them now. Hello and welcome to part 1 of what potentially might be a multi-part series of the top 10 characters that absolutely need resurrections. I guess I should say 10 characters that deserve resurrection. And it's not exactly a top 10 list since there's potentially going to be multiple parts to this, and this list is in no particular order. With that out of the way, the following are some characters that K-Lab really didn't think through when making them, and I feel that they should really give them an extra boost when it comes time to resurrect them.
縛り紅姫火遊び紅姫数珠つなぎ
Alright, kicking things off we have Kisuke Urahara, the Mind version. Not to be confused with the White Day version, this one came out a lot earlier. And while his stats are low, it is to be expected seeing as he is an older character. Unfortunately though, his 6-star abilities are terrible. In fact, the only good one he has is Bombardment. I mean, he does have Bruiser and Berserker, but they're both at 10%. And even though his soul trait is a 20% strong attack damage link, it's still not enough to make up for the horrible skills. Because if you think about it, there are other characters with low stats, but that can be salvaged, because they typically have Frenzy or a high enough Bruiser and Berserker. At the very least, they have a decent killer, but Kisuke doesn't even have that, as he has an Espada killer, which right now is the worst killer to have. And to top it all off, his strong attack 3 has a 40% magnification. To put this in perspective, most other characters' strong attacks have 120% mag. So this is just awful. I'm not saying he'd be usable if he gets resurrected, and you can bet I'll make a video on him when he does, but anything's gotta be better than what he has now.
私を捕らえることはできん終わりだ
Next up is a character that's not really all that bad, all things considered. I mean, he does have a really decent attack, as well as both a plus 30 Bruiser, plus 40 Berserker, and a boosted strong attack damage link, even though his SP isn't that high. Heck, he's even got a decent killer. The reason he's on this list though is because Byakuya, being one of the most popular captains, has been shafted in almost every single turn. And although he's not the worst character to come out in the Lost Agent series, he's definitely not one of the best. Not to mention that K-Lab really likes to play guinea pig with him, as he was the first character to have the vortex that surrounds him, and another iteration of him was the first character to have a shield move. And I believe the first ever vortex move in the game was actually one for Byakuya. Still, it's because of this that I feel K-Lab feels the need to water down the rest of the things about this character. And as I mentioned, he does have a decent attack, but he doesn't really have that great of range. So giving him something like long reach would have been a good idea. And while he does have a really good link and decent range on his strong attacks, they don't do that much damage due to his low SP. I don't think he should have been the strongest character to come out of the Lost Agent series, but it is the last time we see Byakuya in the anime, and I feel like this version of the character did not do him justice.
氷点百滑走悪いな
Next up is another popular captain, who I'm just realizing is the third Mind character in a row that we're doing, and I'm also just realizing I could have done these based on attribute instead of just randomly picking 10, but we're too late for that now. Anyway, Toshiro's also one of those characters who doesn't have the highest stats, but can more than make up for it with skills. Unfortunately, they didn't give him the proper skills to do that. He does have a Bruiser at 15%, but that's not nearly high enough considering his attack stat is higher than his SP. That said, he does have Bombardment and Debilitator. And for a while, he did have the best special in the entire game, considering not all specials had 150 mag. And Toshiro does have a decent link of strong attack recharge, but considering he's got no multipliers for his strong attacks, this really isn't all that great. On top of all this, much like Kisuke, he also has an Espada killer, so he doesn't even have that going for him. This character was one of the first 6 stars, so I can't really fault K-Lab for not knowing what they were doing yet, especially since they gave him such a powerful special. But I really hope they end up fixing this character when he gets a resurrection.
弱砲来光弁
Speaking of early 6 stars, Soi Fon was one of the very first 6 stars. But because of that, she is one of the worst characters in this game. I mean, she does have a decent attack of 671, but that's about all she has. Seriously, her only abilities are Sprinter, Long Reach, Havoc, and Devastation. And out of those, Sprinter is standard. The Long Reach is actually useful for this character, but Havoc and Devastation are both at 10%. This character has no Bruiser, has no Berserker, has no Frenzy, and this is actually a very big problem, because even though her attack is moderate moderately high, there is no multipliers behind this, and even her Espada killer isn't really that much of a help. I guess the one good thing is that her soul trait is a strong attack recharge link, and all of her strong attacks and her normal attack have a chance to inflict burn, but they do have poor range, and they hit a small number of times, plus there's no debuff. She's actually a character I'm really excited to see a resurrection for, because her stats would be high enough to make a decent character, and you know they're gonna do her justice, because having this few of abilities is definitely not gonna make it to the newer version of this character. Otherwise, Tonberry's gonna be going back to Japan, but this time with a pitchfork.
染めの舞月城させません。
So the last two were failures from the start, so moving on to a character that was actually pretty good back in the day. Now don't get me wrong, there was definitely some room for improvement. After all, her stats aren't that high and she only has a plus 10 Berserker. That said, she has a strong attack damage link, bringing that total up to 30%, and she had Debilitator, which was definitely nice, especially in PvP. She's also got a decent attack speed, especially for an older character, and her strong attack range isn't bad. Not to mention she's got a Soul Reaper killer, which is the best killer you can have even back then. Still, this character's damage could definitely use an upgrade. Replacing that Berserker with a Frenzy and adding a Bruiser wouldn't be a terrible idea, and with the addition of the upgraded stats would actually make this a usable character now. And there is a chance that instead of Frenzy they'll just give her a higher Berserker, but considering they're probably not gonna remake the Zanpakuto characters anytime soon, I think giving them Frenzy would make their usability last a lot longer, especially for a character whose strong attacks can inflict debilitating freeze and whose strong attacks 2 and 3 have a 40% magnification.
くらえ死の息吹レスピだそうおよ
Up next is a character who should actually be afraid of when Caleb resurrects him. I'm talking about OG Barragan. Now there have been several PvP nightmares in the history of this game, but none were more annoying than when Barragan was king. After all, this character could inflict debilitating weakening on all of his attacks and his special, and he had a dodge rate link, which now kind of sucks, but back in the day, if you stacked it up to 44%, it would mean that almost half of all attacks did not hit Barragan, and those that did had a really strong chance to have been weakened. Now keep in mind, he was a terror back then, and all he had was a plus 10 Bruiser and plus 10 Berserker. If they were to give him something like Poise and say Frenzy, where his strong attacks would hit twice, it would double the chance of inflicting the weakening, and make his strong attacks unstoppable unless he's frozen or stunned. Not to mention, they're also going to give him a secondary link. If that happens to be damage reduction, then we can very well see the return of Barragan in PvP. Now of course that's all speculation. They could just increase his Bruiser and Berserker, and give him just a generic link. Still, even if they do that, it would be a decent character, even if you wouldn't be able to use him in PvP. That said, they are going to be making a push for his Espadas real soon, so seeing him rise up again wouldn't be out of the question.
蒼天に座せ挽回大紅蓮氷林丸
Next up is Hyorinmaru, without a doubt the coolest looking Zanpakuto, and one who definitely should have been better than he is. Seriously, Caleb gave us 2 ice-type Zanpakuto, but at least Sode no Shirayuki had a decent link. Hyorinmaru has a fire-resistant link, and his Bruiser and Berserker are only 10%. Now he does have Debilitator, as well as a Soul Reaper killer, but that in no way makes up for it. And considering his Berserker is only 10%, and his Strong Attack 1 and Strong Attack 3 both have a 33% magnification, this character is not doing any sort of damage anytime soon. That is, at least until they resurrect him, when they could increase his stats, give him a decent link, and maybe, just maybe, increase his magnifications. If they don't do that, then they can at least give him Frenzy and have his strong attacks hit twice. That would at least maybe give us a decent character. Also, I'm just realizing that Hyorinmaru is also mined, and so is the next character.
神死にの槍武闘連陣甘すぎや
Well, you know Gin had to be on this list. After all, Soi Fon was on here, so why wouldn't Gin be? Now I know there are a ton of Gin fans out there, but even you guys have to admit this is one of the worst characters in the entire game. You thought Soi Fon had a few abilities? Gin only has 3 and one of them is Sprinter. The other ones are Bruiser at 10% and Long Reach at 10%, so this character isn't doing any damage anytime soon. That said, he does have a few things going for him, and some things that, given the proper abilities, would actually make this character somewhat decent if he's resurrected. All of his attacks, including his special, have a chance to inflict poison, giving him Debilitator, and maybe a Frenzy frenzy, or even a berserker for that matter, would actually make for some pretty decent damage, as well as a boss killing special. And even though this character does have long reach, his normal attack still has very poor reach, so maybe increasing that would actually let you use their normal attack. I do think that K-Lab knows that people like Gin, and I don't think they'll pass up the opportunity to make this character a usable character, especially since they like people spending their orbs, and I'm sure they would jump at the opportunity to re-release this character. Out of all the Fullbringers, we were all very excited to see what Kugo Ginjo was gonna have to offer, especially since he was their leader and the last Fullbringer to have a 5-star. Unfortunately though, we were all left severely disappointed. He was one of those characters that K-Lab was really excited to test something new on, but accidentally ended up dropping the ball instead. This is because Ginjo was the very first character to have the low stamina damage boost, which I guess in theory is a good idea, but nobody really likes this link. I mean, it is a decent damage boost, but it's kind of hard to control because you might accidentally die, and even if you get to low enough stamina to actually activate the link, it might all get ruined if one of your teammates heals you, or if you accidentally pick up health somewhere in the quest. Aside from that link though, he only has a plus 20 bruiser and a plus 20 berserker, which is a shame considering his strong attacks actually have really good range, and given the proper link as well as boosted berserker and bruiser would actually make for a pretty good character. This is actually one I'm really excited for, because if they're increasing the abilities for all the characters, then this character by default is gonna be an amazing one. I just really hope they give him a good link, because can you imagine if he gets a stamina recovery link? And finally, we have Sosuke Aizen, a character who absolutely should have been way better than he was. At the time, he had the highest SP, higher than any other character by far, but he had no decent multipliers. He only had a plus 10 berserker and a plus 15 bruiser, making his overwhelming SP kind of pointless, especially when compared to literally any other character that had frenzy, even if their SP wasn't that high. People were also pretty upset that this character had a stamina recovery link, although to be honest that didn't really bother me much. What bothered me more was that he had a captain killer, so we could really only take advantage of that in specific situations. Still, I'm really excited to see this character resurrected, because I'm almost certain they're gonna give him frenzy. This would be amazing because he actually has really decent strong attacks. They have really good range and his strong attack 3 has a 150% mag. That said, there would still be some problems with this character, like his 40% magnification on his strong attack 1, his killer that we've talked about already, and his special not being full screen, though it does have bombardment. Still, if they increase the SP by as much as they have been, that would definitely help to make up for all of this, and it would give us a character with an unbelievably high SP. Also, it just hit me, Ginjo is also mine. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you didn't see a character you think should be on here, let me know. Like I said, this is just a part 1 and this by no means covers all the characters that would be amazing if they're resurrected. Expect a part 2 sometime in the future, and thank you guys once again for watching.